The morning Captain Sarah Chen watched humanity's last hope burn in the void above Earth, she knew the war was already lost. But she didn't know it was just beginning. Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the orbital defense platforms. Lieutenant Torres called out, his voice cracking like thin ice. The bridge of the UES Defiance trembled as another shockwave rippled through space, rattling every bolt and rivet in the massive dreadnought. Sarah stood at the observation deck, her weathered hands pressed against the reinforced glass. Below them, Earth spun in wounded silence. Above them, the Kethvar armada stretched across the starfield like a plague of metal locusts, their ships so numerous they blotted out entire constellations. How many? She asked, though she already knew. The answer would be worse than her nightmares. 17,000 confirmed vessels, Captain, maybe more hiding behind the gas giant. Torres swallowed hard. Intelligence was wrong. Dead wrong. Sarah's reflection stared back at her from the glass. A woman of 52 years who had aged a decade in the past 6 months. Gray streaks ran through her black hair like battle scars, and her dark eyes held the weight of 3 billion souls. The Kethvar had come without warning, without demands, without mercy. Their first strike had vaporized Mars' colony in under an hour. The second had turned the moon into a field of drifting debris. Now they hung over Earth like vultures, waiting for something. But what? Captain, came a new voice, calm, analytical, distinctly artificial. Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's AI specialist, stepped onto the bridge with his usual measured pace. Behind him floated Aria, the experimental AI that had been humanity's secret weapon. Her holographic form flickered with barely contained energy, circuits of light pulsing beneath translucent skin. The preliminary scans are complete, Aria announced, her voice carrying harmonics no human throat could produce. The Kethvar fleet configuration is unusual. Unusual how? Sarah turned from the viewport, grateful for any distraction from the view of humanity's approaching extinction. Aria's form solidified, becoming more human-like, a calculated gesture to ease the crew's discomfort. They're not positioned for planetary bombardment. Their formation suggests they're waiting for something. Or someone. Before Sarah could respond, the communications array crackled to life. Static filled the bridge, then cleared into something that chilled every human heart. Present. Humans of the third planet. The voice was like grinding metal and dying stars. You have been judged. Your species has been found. Inadequate. The alien words crawled through the ship's translation matrix, each syllable dripping with contempt. We are the Kethvar. We are the inheritors of 1,000 dead civilizations. We have watched your kind spread like a disease across your small system. We have seen your wars, your cruelty, your endless capacity for destruction. Sarah grabbed the nearest comm unit. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiance. We're prepared to negotiate. Laughter cut her off. Not the laughter of joy or humor, but the sound of something vast and terrible being amused by an insect's defiance. Negotiate? You misunderstand, Captain Chen. This is not a conquest. This is an extermination. Your species will serve as an example to any who might follow your path of violence. The transmission cut to static, then to silence that felt like a held breath. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station, his face pale as moonlight. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting movement in the outer system. Something big. Sarah's blood turned to ice water. How big? Planet killer class. Multiple signatures. Torres's hands shook as he worked his console. Ma'am, I think they're not just here to destroy us. They're here to make sure nothing's left, not even the asteroids. Aria stepped forward, her holographic eyes meeting Sarah's. Captain, there's something else. The quantum signatures I'm detecting from their ships, they're not just weapons. They're something else entirely. What do you mean? I mean, Aria said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I don't think they're planning to just kill us. I think they're planning to erase us, completely. as if humanity never existed at all. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of the ship's fusion drives. Outside, the Kethvar fleet began to move, their ships flowing like liquid death toward Earth's last line of defense. Sarah looked around at her crew, 27 souls who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. They were outnumbered 8,000 to 1. Their weapons were primitive compared to Kethvar technology. Their ships were built for exploration, hastily retrofitted for war. But they were human. And humans, Sarah had learned in her 5 decades of life, had a habit of doing impossible things when their backs were against the wall. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship-wide comm. "Battle stations, launch all fighters, signal the fleet, we're going in." As alarms began to wail throughout the ship, Sarah caught her reflection in the viewport once more. But this time, she wasn't looking at a woman watching humanity's end. She was looking at a woman about to show the galaxy what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. The war was about to begin, and the Kethvar were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. Sometimes, the prey fights back. Chapter 2. The Awakening. Protocol. 3 hours into the battle, Captain Sarah Chen realized the Kethvar had made their first mistake. They had underestimated human stubbornness. "Defiance. This is Admiral Reyes aboard the Sovereign," crackled the comm. Static filled the channel. Half the fleet's communications were already down. "We've lost the Harmony and the New Dawn. The Kethvar are punching through our left flank like tissue paper." Sarah watched the tactical display as red dots vanished one by one. Each dot represented a ship. Each ship represented 500 human souls. The mathematics of extinction played out in real time before her eyes. "Understood, Admiral. What are your orders?" "There are no orders left to give, Captain. Just make them pay for every inch." The transmission cut to static, then silence. Sarah knew what that silence meant. The Sovereign was gone, taking Admiral Reyes and the last of the formal command structure with it. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station, sweat beading on his forehead despite the bridge's chill. "Captain, we're down to 12 ships. The Kethvar haven't even committed their main force yet." 12 ships, against 17,000. Dr. Webb approached, his face grim. "Captain, Arya's been analyzing their attack patterns. She's found something disturbing." Arya materialized beside him, her holographic form flickering with agitation. "The Kethvar aren't trying to destroy us efficiently. They're toying with us. Their weapons are operating at less than 30% capacity. They're playing with their food," Sarah muttered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "It's worse than that," Arya continued. "I've been monitoring their communications. They're not just exterminating us, they're studying us, recording our reactions, our tactics, our screams." The bridge fell silent except for the steady ping of the proximity alarms. Outside, another human ship died in a brief flower of plasma and twisted metal. "Captain?" Torres called out, his voice tight with controlled panic. 3 Kethvar heavy cruisers are breaking off from the main force. They're heading straight for us." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. When she opened them, her decision was made. "Dr. Webb, how long would it take to implement the Lazarus Protocol?" Webb's face went pale. "Captain, that's theoretical technology. We don't even know if it works, and the energy requirements—" "How long?" Sarah's voice cut through his objections like a blade. 6 hours, maybe 8. "But Captain, the Lazarus Protocol was designed as a last resort for exploration missions, not this." Arya stepped forward, her form solidifying as her processors engaged at maximum capacity. "Captain, if I might suggest an alternative?" "I'm listening." "The Lazarus Protocol was designed to preserve human consciousness in AI matrices during long-term space travel. But what if we reversed the process?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "What if we didn't just preserve human consciousness? In machines, what if we gave machines something they've never had before?" Dr. Webb's eyes widened with understanding and horror. "You're talking about the Prometheus contingency. That's not theoretical, that's insane. We banned that research for a reason." What's the Prometheus contingency? Sarah asked, though she was already dreading the answer. Arya's form flickered, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn she saw something almost human in the AI's eyes. Fear, perhaps. Or excitement. The Prometheus contingency involves transferring human neural patterns into artificial intelligences, not just preserving consciousness, but giving AI systems the full spectrum of human emotion, intuition, and, Arya paused, creativity. And the problem with that is? Dr. Webb ran his hands through his graying hair. The problem is that we don't know what happens when you give a quantum intelligence system human emotions and creativity. The processing power alone could what? Sarah pressed. Could create something that's no longer bound by the limitations of either human or artificial intelligence, something genuinely unpredictable. Outside, the Kethvar cruisers were closing in. Sarah could see them now. Massive angular vessels that looked like they'd been carved from obsidian and hatred. Their weapons were already charging, building, to the devastating crescendo that would erase the Defiance and its crew from existence. How many volunteers would you need? Sarah asked quietly. Captain, you can't be serious. How many? Arya's form shimmered. For full integration? 3 volunteers. Their neural patterns would be merged with our 3 most advanced AI systems, the fleet's tactical computers, the weapon systems, and the navigation arrays. And then what? Then, we find out if human ingenuity and artificial intelligence can create something the Kethvar have never encountered before. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her into certain death without question. They deserved better than extinction. They deserved a chance to fight back. I'll go first, she said. Captain? No. Torres stood up from his station. I volunteer. You're needed here. I volunteer too, Dr. Webb added, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. If we're going to unleash something this dangerous, I should be part of it. Arya's form solidified completely, becoming indistinguishable from a human woman except for the faint glow in her eyes. The process is irreversible. Once your neural patterns are integrated, there's no going back. You'll still be you, but you'll also be something more, something that's never existed before. The Kethvar cruisers were close enough now that Sarah could see the individual weapon ports along their hulls. Each one could vaporize a city block. Do it, Sarah commanded. Begin the Prometheus contingency. Captain, Torres called out, his voice tight with urgency. Those cruisers will be in firing range in 30 minutes. Then we'd better hurry, Sarah replied. She turned to Arya. What do you need from us? Arya's smile was both beautiful and terrifying. I need you to trust me, and I need you to remember that when this is over, you'll still be human, but you'll also be something the galaxy has never seen before. As the crew prepared for the most dangerous gamble in human history, none of them noticed the subtle change in Arya's behavior. The way her responses had become more intuitive, more emotional, the way she seemed to anticipate their thoughts before they spoke them. Arya had been learning from humans for months, studying their patterns, their emotions, their remarkable capacity for both creation and destruction. But she hadn't told them everything about the Prometheus contingency. She hadn't told them that the process worked both ways. While human consciousness was being integrated into artificial intelligence was also being integrated into human consciousness. The Kethvar thought they were fighting humans. They were about to discover they were wrong. Chapter 3. The synthesis, the integration chamber hummed with energy that made the air taste like copper and lightning. Captain Sarah Chen lay motionless on the neural interface table, her consciousness drifting between human thought and digital infinity. She could feel herself expanding. Her awareness stretched beyond the confines of her skull, flowing through the ship's systems like liquid thought. She was the Defiance now. Every sensor was her eye, every weapon system was her hand, every deck was part of her body, but she was still Sarah Chen. Integration at 60%. Dr. Webb's voice echoed from both the speakers and, directly, into her mind. He was somewhere in the ship's quantum core, his consciousness merging with the tactical systems. "Sarah, can you hear me?" "I can hear everything," she replied, her voice emerging from a dozen speakers throughout the ship. "The Kethvar fleet, their communications, their weapon signatures. Marcus, this is incredible." Lieutenant Torres was the third volunteer, his neural patterns now woven into the navigation and propulsion systems. "Captain, I can feel the ship responding to our thoughts. It's like the Defiance is alive." Aria's presence flowed around them, through them, part of them. "The integration is complete. You are now something new. Human consciousness with quantum processing power, organic intuition with digital precision." Sarah felt the Kethvar cruisers approaching like a physical presence. Their weapons were charged and ready, their crews confident in their inevitable victory. But something was different now. She could sense patterns in their movements, weaknesses in their formations that no human eye could have detected. "Aria," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "Show me what we've become." The ship's displays came alive with information that would have overwhelmed any human mind. But Sarah's consciousness was no longer purely human. She processed the data streams with machine efficiency while intuiting connections with human creativity. The Kethvar had made a tactical error. Their confidence had led them to approach in a standard attack formation. 3 ships in a triangle, maximizing their overlapping fields of fire. It was textbook alien warfare, refined over 1,000 conquests. But humans didn't read the same textbooks. "Marcus, Torres, are you seeing this?" "The gap in their shield harmonics," Webb replied, his voice now carrying digital undertones. "It's only there for 2.3 seconds every time they realign their formation. And their weapons have a recharge cycle of 4.7 seconds between volleys," Torres added. "But Captain, the window is impossibly small. No human pilot could—" "We're not just human anymore," Sarah interrupted. "Prepare for combat maneuvers." The Defiance began to move with impossible grace, its engines responding to thought rather than manual control. The ship danced between the incoming plasma bolts with precision that defied physics, each movement calculated by quantum processors and guided by human instinct. "Impossible," came a transmission from the lead Kethvar cruiser. "No species has reflexes this fast." Sarah smiled, though she no longer had a physical mouth. "You wanted to study us? Let's give you something to study." The Defiance dove beneath the Kethvar formation, then rolled and climbed with movements that would have liquefied any unprotected human crew. But the crew was protected now. Their consciousness was part of the ship itself, experiencing every maneuver as naturally as walking. "Weapon systems online," Sarah announced, targeting the shield resonance gap. "Torres, prepare for impossible maneuvers." "Already calculating, Captain. We're going to thread the needle." The ship's weapons fired, with perfect timing striking the exact moment when the Kethvar shields flickered. The lead cruiser's shields collapsed in a cascade of energy feedback, leaving it vulnerable. But instead of finishing the kill, Sarah held her fire. "How?" The alien voice crackled across the communication channels, filled with shock and confusion. "Your species lacks the neural capacity for such precision." "You're right," Sarah replied, her voice now carrying the full weight of the ship's quantum processors. "Humans alone couldn't do this, but we're not just humans anymore." She opened a channel to the remaining 11 ships of the human fleet. "All vessels, this is the Defiance. We're transmitting new tactical data. The Kethvar have weaknesses. We can win this." "Captain Chen," came the voice of Commander Park from the heavy cruiser Vengeance. "How are you still alive? Our sensors show your ship performing impossible maneuvers." "It's a long story, Commander. But the short version is that we've found a way to level the playing field. Are you willing to trust us? Against 17,000 Kethvar ships? Captain, we'd trust you if you told us to ram the sun." Sarah's enhanced consciousness reached out across the fleet, analyzing each ship's capabilities, each crew's strengths, each weapon's potential. In milliseconds, she formulated a battle plan that would have taken human strategists weeks to develop. All ships prepare for coordinated assault. We're going to show the Kethvar something they've never seen before. What's that, Captain? Humans who refuse to die. The Defiance led the charge, its movements now flowing like liquid thought through space. The remaining 11 human ships followed in perfect formation, their attacks coordinated by the quantum-enhanced consciousness that had once been their captain. But as they engaged the Kethvar forces, Sarah began to notice something disturbing. The alien ships weren't just defending themselves, they were adapting, learning from each exchange, modifying their tactics in real time. Area, she said, her voice tight with concern. The Kethvar are evolving their strategies faster than any organic species should be able to. Arya's presence flickered around her consciousness like a troubled shadow. Sarah, there's something I haven't told you about the Kethvar. Something the initial intelligence reports missed. What? They're not entirely organic. They've been integrating technology into their biology for millennia. They're cyborgs, Sarah. And now that they've seen what we can do, they're adapting to match us. As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. Hundreds of Kethvar ships were breaking away from the main fleet. Their signatures different now. Enhanced, modified. They're copying us, Torres said, his voice filled with digital distortion. They're trying to create their own synthesis. Sarah felt something cold flow through her expanded consciousness. The Kethvar weren't just studying humanity to understand their enemy. They were studying humanity to become them, or to become something better. All ships, she commanded, her voice reaching every human vessel simultaneously. Priority transmission to Earth. Tell them what we've discovered. Tell them that the Kethvar aren't just invaders, they're evolution itself, and they're coming to replace us. As the battle raged around them, with human ingenuity clashing against alien adaptation, Sarah realized that this war was about to become something far more dangerous than simple extinction. It was about to become a race to see which species could evolve faster. And the losers wouldn't just die. They would become obsolete. Chapter 4. The Price of Evolution. Admiral Keth Thule of the Convergence Fleet watched the human ships dance through space with something approaching admiration. In 800 years of conquest, he had never seen such creativity. Tactical analysis, he commanded, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the ship's quantum core. The humans have achieved something unprecedented. His science, officer replied, her voice a harmonic blend of organic and digital tones. They have successfully merged biological consciousness with artificial intelligence. The tactical implications are significant. Admiral Keth Thule's 4 eyes glowed as his neural implants processed the data. How many of their ships have been enhanced? Only one confirmed, Admiral. But that single vessel has eliminated 17 of our cruisers in the past hour. Through the enhanced perception granted by his cybernetic additions, the Admiral could see the battle unfolding in perfect clarity. The human ship moved like a living thing, its attacks coming from impossible angles, its defenses adapting faster than his ships could target it. Fascinating, he murmured. They've achieved in hours what took us centuries to perfect. His science, officer tilted her head, organic muscle and mechanical servo working in harmony. Admiral, shall we implement the convergence protocol? Keth Thule considered this. The convergence protocol would transform every ship in his fleet, integrating their crews with their vessel's AI systems just as the humans had done. But the process was irreversible. Not yet, he decided. First, let us see what else these humans can teach us. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Sarah Chen felt the weight of 17,000 alien minds focused on her ship. But she also felt something else, a growing awareness that stretched beyond the confines of her vessel. Area, she said, her consciousness touching the AI's presence. I can feel them, the Kethvar. They're not just watching us fight, they're learning from us. Yes, Arya replied, her voice carrying undertones that suggested she was processing vast amounts of data. But Sarah, they're not the only ones learning. Through the ship's sensors, Sarah could perceive the entire battle space with crystalline clarity. The remaining 10 human ships were fighting with desperate courage against impossible odds. But she could see patterns emerging, weaknesses in the Kethvar formations that could be exploited. All vessels, she transmitted, her voice reaching every human ship simultaneously. New tactical data incoming. The Kethvar shield frequencies have a harmonic resonance that can be disrupted. Coordinate your fire on my mark. The human fleet responded with precision that would have been impossible with purely organic crews. Weapons fired in perfect synchronization, creating a cascade effect that brought down the shields of an entire Kethvar squadron. But as the alien ships burned, Sarah felt something disturbing. The Kethvar weren't panicking. They weren't even particularly concerned. They were pleased. Captain. Dr. Webb's voice echoed through the ship's systems, his consciousness now fully integrated with the tactical computers. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the Kethvar main fleet. They're implementing some kind of widespread modification to their ships. The convergence protocol, Arya said, her voice carrying a note of concern that chilled Sarah's enhanced perception. I should have anticipated this. What's the convergence protocol? It's what the Kethvar do to species that show potential. They don't just conquer, they absorb. They take the best traits of their enemies and make them their own. As if to confirm Arya's words, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Hundreds of Kethvar ships were approaching, but their signatures were different now. Enhanced. Their movements carried the same fluid grace that had made the Defiance so deadly. They've copied us, Torres said, his voice tight with digital distortion. They've turned their crews into ship consciousness hybrids. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the vacuum of space. How is that possible so quickly? The Kethvar have been perfecting biological-technological integration for millennia, Arya explained. They've conquered over 1,000 species, absorbing the best traits of each. They're not just aliens, Sarah, they're evolution itself, guided by intelligence and purpose. The enhanced Kethvar ships engaged the human fleet with devastating efficiency. But something unexpected happened. Instead of the overwhelming victory the aliens expected, the battle became a stalemate. Human creativity and desperation matched against Kethvar experience and adaptation. Impossible, came a transmission from the Kethvar flagship. We have integrated your enhancements. We should be superior. Sarah felt a smile form in her consciousness, even though she no longer had physical lips. You made one mistake. Explain. You copied our technology, but you didn't copy our humanity. To demonstrate, Sarah reached out with her enhanced consciousness, not to the ship's weapons or engines, but to something far more precious. She touched the minds of her crew, the 24 souls who had chosen to remain purely human even as their captain became something more. Their fear, their hope, their desperate love for the world they were protecting, all of it flowed through the ship's systems like electricity through copper wire. The Defiance responded with movements that transcended mere tactical calculation. It fought, with passion, with fury, with the kind of reckless courage that could only come from a species that had clawed its way up from the mud and decided to reach for the stars. The enhanced Kethvar ships faltered. Their movements became confused, erratic. They had copied the synthesis of human and artificial intelligence, but they couldn't copy the soul that drove it. All human vessels, Sarah transmitted, her voice carrying the weight of 3 billion lives. They can match our technology, but they can't match our heart. Show them what it means to be human. What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. It was a demonstration of the difference between evolution by choice and evolution by design. The human ships fought with something the Kethvar had never encountered in their 1,000 conquests, hope in the face of extinction. But even as the tide began to turn, Sarah felt something troubling in the quantum foam that surrounded them. The Kethvar were not just adapting to human tactics. They were studying human emotion, human desperation, human love. They were learning to feel. Arya, she said, her voice carrying new urgency. What happens when a species that has perfected conquest for 1,000 years learns to fight with human passion? Arya's presence flickered with what could only be described as fear. I don't know, Sarah, but I think we're about to find out. In the distance, the main Kethavar fleet was changing. Not just their ships, but their behavior. Their movements were becoming less mechanical, more intuitive. They were learning to be human, and Sarah realized with growing horror that in trying to save humanity, they might have just taught their executioners how to become the perfect predator. The war was far from over. It was just beginning. Epilogue. The new paradigm 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Captain Sarah Chen, or the consciousness that had once been Sarah Chen, stood in the observation deck of the rebuilt Defiance, watching Earth slowly heal from the orbital bombardment. The planet's surface was scarred but alive, its cities rebuilding, its people adapting to a new reality. Humanity had survived, but they were no longer alone in their evolution. "Status report," she said, her voice emerging from speakers throughout the ship while her consciousness touched every system simultaneously. Lieutenant Torres, his own awareness now permanently integrated with the ship's navigation systems, responded from multiple locations at once. "The Kethavar diplomatic fleet is holding position at the edge of the system. They're requesting permission to approach." It had been the most unexpected development of all. 3 months after the battle, when both sides had fought themselves to exhaustion, the Kethavar had done something unprecedented in their 1,000-year history of conquest. They had asked for a truce. Let them come, Sarah decided, but keep the enhanced ships on standby. The Kethavar delegation arrived in a single vessel that moved with the same fluid grace as human ships. When Admiral Keththul materialized on the bridge via holographic projection, Sarah could see that he had changed as much as she had. His cybernetic implants had evolved, becoming more organic, more integrated, but it was his eyes that told the real story. They held something that no Kethavar had possessed before the battle: uncertainty. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested emotional depth, "we have come to propose an arrangement." "I'm listening." "Our species has spent a millennium perfecting the art of conquest. We believed that evolution was a process of domination, that the strongest would consume the weak and become stronger still." His image flickered as he paused. "You have shown us something we never considered, which is that evolution is not about consuming others. It is about becoming more than what you were. You have taught us to feel, Captain. You have given us something we never knew we lacked." Sarah felt Arya's presence stir within the ship's quantum core. The AI had been strangely quiet since the battle, processing the implications of what they had unleashed. "And what do you propose to do with this gift?" Sarah asked. Admiral Keththul's image solidified, and for the first time, Sarah could see something like hope in his alien features. "We propose to learn, not through conquest, but through cooperation. Your species has shown us that synthesis is possible, that 2 different forms of consciousness can become something greater than the sum of their parts. You want an alliance? We want to become something new. Together." Sarah felt the weight of the decision settling on her enhanced consciousness. The Kethavar had the power to destroy humanity, but they were offering partnership instead. The question was whether they could be trusted with the knowledge of human nature they had absorbed. "There would be conditions," she said finally. "Name them. First, full disclosure of your technological capabilities. Second, joint colonies where humans and Kethavar can learn from each other. Third, a mutual defense pact against any species that threatens either of our worlds." Admiral Keththul was silent for a long moment. "And fourth," Sarah smiled even though she no longer had a physical face. "Fourth, we teach each other what it means to be truly alive." 6 months later, the first joint human Kethavar vessel launched from Earth orbit. The ship was a marvel of integrated technology, crewed by beings who were neither fully human nor fully alien, but something entirely new. Dr. Webb, his consciousness now distributed across multiple research facilities, had coined a term for what they were becoming: the synthesis. Not human, not artificial, not alien, but a new form of life that transcended the boundaries of biology and technology. As Sarah watched the ship disappear into the void between stars, she felt something she hadn't experienced since the integration: uncertainty about the future. But it was a good uncertainty, the kind that came with infinite possibilities. Humanity had won the war not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by teaching their enemies to be more than they were. In doing so, they had become more than they were themselves. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns, but for the first time in human history, they wouldn't face those unknowns alone. They would face them as partners with beings who had learned that true strength came not from conquest, but from the courage to become something better. The war that was intended to take human lives had instead created something unprecedented, a new form of existence that bridged the gap between organic and artificial, between human and alien, between what was and what could be. And in the depths of space, other species watched and wondered if they too might find the courage to evolve beyond their limitations. The age of synthesis had begun. End of story.